Thobela. Nda. Abusheni. Good morning, everyone.
That's as far I can go, sorry.
It is proper that as we open officially this second South African Humanities Deans Association and National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences Biennial National Conference, we start by acknowledging the following dignitaries: the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Limpopo, Professor N.M. Moghalong, and representatives of his management team. University of Venda, Prof. N.B. Ntambeleni, and representatives of his management team. All vice chancellors and principals of various institutions and representatives of their management teams. The Sahuda president, Professor P. Maseko. The Sahuda vice president, Professor M. Masora. The NIHSS CEO, Mr. Tumelo Mokoena, and representatives of his team. Senior Administrator, Scholarships, Ms. Thandisi Chele. All the South African Executive Deans, Faculty of Humanities. The Conference Chair, Professor M. Makhatlela. Members of the Organizing Committee, keynote speakers, and all delegates. We are excited to welcome you to the warm and fertile land of Limpopo Province, the province of peace. The Limpopo Province is a sacred land that has been ruled over millennia by great African kings and queens. It is within this context that the executive deans of the Faculty of Humanities in the Northern Corridor, constituted by University of Limpopo and University of Venda, are privileged to be co-hosting the 2023 Sahuda-Nihss Biennial National Conference on this beautiful land. The 2023 Sahuda-Nihss Conference theme is revealing of the current unimpressive global situation and the need for citizens to respond with agency. Globally, from any standpoint, the prevailing conditions are indicative of the imminent crisis confronting humanity. The crisis is unfolding despite the promising advancements in medical health care, information communication technologies, and sophisticated modes of transportation. Recently, humanity suffered from the COVID-19 pandemic, and its consequences are still felt today. Economies have since stagnated. Humanity's quality of health and well-being has deteriorated, and political relations are increasingly getting strained. The continued Euro-American hegemony, the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and the Palestine-Israel conflict, among others, indicators of the state of crisis in which humanity finds itself. Africa, our motherland, has over the centuries been in a state of disease due to human atrocities such as slavery, colonialism, apartheid in South Africa, and the covert yet malignant neoliberal agenda. With this in mind, we join progressive forces calling for the restoration of global peace, stability, and well-being. We perceive this crisis as undesirable and likely to regress humanity's peace, well-being, and prosperity. We see this conference as an opportunity for African scholars to sit and interrogate the conference question: what role can Africa play in maintaining global peace, stability, and well-being, especially considering the recent COVID-19 scare and the strained state of international relations? We are optimistic that at the end of this conference, all invited scholars, students, professionals, and interested stakeholders will have proposed restorative, tangible, and sustainable strategies and interventions that can contribute towards peace and stability. In your deliberations during this conference, we encourage you to strive towards finding contextually relevant solutions that will pull humanity away from the dangerous cliff. Please join us as we call for the urgent restoration of global peace, stability, and well-being. This conference is for you. Enjoy it. Form scholarly collaborations and make friends. Keep in mind that these kinds of alliances and friendships could inspire you to come back to this lovely province of ours. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. To our DVCs who are here this morning, the president of Sahuda, the deputy president of Sahuda, our fellow executive deans in humanities, honorable guest speakers, our students and emerging scholars, and all the conference presenters and participants. On behalf of the organizing committee, I wish to express our sincere gratitude to have you here in this conference. Attending a conference is not a luxury, but has become a requirement from most of our university's strategic plans. Our strategic objectives, they emphasize and they demand increased research and research outputs. Our institutions are under a severe pressure to deliver on impactful research, a research that makes a difference, a research that helps to solve most of our social ills and complexities. This is therefore accompanied by a huge impetus to produce research outputs. Every university requires its academics to publish and to grow in that area. This is a demand that emerges, and it's driven from the top. Our education ministry, as they stipulate even the research unit targets for each institution that should be achieved. That's our being here this week is a response in trying to meet those demands. But above all, conferences, they provide us a platform as well as a great opportunity for scholars to build networks with other academics and to interact with experts in the same or similar field of studies all around the country and the world, and also to share thoughts on recent advances and technological breakthroughs. Academic conferences, they present us as researchers with an opportunity to keep up with the latest developments in our fields, to learn about career-changing prospects and forge strong working relationships. A conference, it is an ideal platform to discuss ideas or identify projects that we can collaborate on to create something bigger and better with potential to create significant impact in the future. This is where you test your theories, your ideas, and your findings regarding their significance and meaningfulness in your field and our society. So, being here is indeed a great investment in your research skills as well as your research career growth. To all our students who are emerging scholars, this week you will be swimming in the sea of great scholars and mentors. Therefore, I wish to implore you to be like a sponge in the water. Learn as much as you can. Engage those aspects. Ask as many questions as you can. I wish to say to you, this is your opportunity to learn from somebody who's not necessarily your supervisor or your direct mentor. Use the platform to grow as a researcher and a scholar. To my fellow researchers, the experts in various areas, this is your platform to push the boundaries in your areas as well as in your fields. This is the platform to exchange ideas, to trade knowledge. This is the platform for you to mentor the upcoming and the rising generation of scholars who will be presenting here this week. Let's do what we do best, colleagues, to mentor and teach them. Chairperson, we have a very, very long day ahead of us, and therefore I do not wish to monopolize the platform. With those few remarks, I wish you all the best, and we are looking forward to those robust discussions and exchange of knowledge that will be taking place. Ndolobua. Tiabulela, I thank you all.
Good morning. Tobela. Raleboga, thank you very much. I have been tasked to officially request Professor Maseko to ascend the stage, Prof, to come and make few remarks. Professor Maseko is the president of Sahuda, which stands for South African Humanities Deans Association. I'm going to ask you, we don't have a hymn for you to come to the stage. Please, if you can immediately come. Thank you very much.
Program Director, Professor Mukhalong and Prof. Ntambelani, the Vice Chancellors of the University of Limpopo and Venda, respectively, Professor Madadze, the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Learning and Teaching at the University of Limpopo, members of senior management of these two universities, especially Professor Maoto and Professor Bantwini, the Executive Deans of Humanities, who are our hosts today, and who are also members of Sahuda, the South African Humanities Deans Association. I wish to also acknowledge the Vice President of the association, Professor Masocha, who just introduced me now, and all members of Sahuda here. I think, Deputy Vice Chancellor, we have about 12 deans. I hope I can count. I think we've got about 12 deans here, and I think it's very phenomenal for any conference, for any activities, to have so many deans in one space, which talks to the strength of the association. I also want to acknowledge our keynote speakers, Professor Mohobe Ramose, Professor Nosisi Feza, and Professor Lesiba Baloi. I haven't seen any of them. Oh, I've seen Professor Ramose. Good morning, Sam. Let me also acknowledge all speakers and delegates here. I want to acknowledge the local organizing committee under the most competent chairpersonship of Professor Makhatlela. And I think even before I continue with my just short introductory remarks, I would like us to please give them a huge applause for successfully organizing this. So greetings, colleagues. I try to avoid saying anything in Chivenda because there are greetings that are said by men, there are greetings that are said by women, and I didn't want to be wrong. I still want to have my meal after this. So you'll bear with me. So colleagues, I also send greetings from Mr. Tumelo Mokwena, the acting CEO of the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences, with which we partner in this event. In my reflections, I just want to do three short things, just to trace the history, quick history of the association, its partnership with the NIHSS, and then the relevance of the conference in realizing the vision of these two institutions. The South African Humanities Deans Association is a peer network of deans of humanities, arts and social sciences disciplines in South African public higher education institutions. The association was founded in 2010. So as I was preparing for this presentation, I don't know, colleagues, if you know, we are 13 years old. Actually, we predate the NIHSS because the NIHSS is 10 years old. It was established, the association, at a time when the disinvestment in humanities, the arts, and the social sciences in university education globally in favor of the STEM subjects was strangling the disciplines and led to questioning their value in society, even in the academy for that matter. It was also at a time when there were heightened calls to the academy to redress the academic practices that marginalized African indigenous knowledge systems, African thought systems, African ways of knowing. So, in partnership with the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences, which, as I said, was established in 2013, Sahuda challenges the academy to rethink and to reimagine the value of humanities in its academic practices. Our main objectives, and I'm just going to lift four only, is to promote the revitalization of the humanities, arts, and social sciences, as well as positioning itself as a meaningful and influential voice in the execution of teaching and learning, research and social engagement in these disciplines in South African universities. Of course, we see Africa as one of our strategic partners in this work. We also seek to promote and support the interests of students in the humanities and social sciences. And through the NIHS's generous the National Institute for the Humanities and Social Sciences generous doctoral and master's scholarship, we wish to contribute to the necessary transformation in the demographic profile of the academics in universities. We also wish to interrogate the role of African thought systems in promoting Africa Purpose Scholarship with relevance and impact in higher education in South Africa, in Africa, and in society at large. And lastly, we also seek to provide a voluntary association through which the needs, views, and concerns of the members of the association can be expressed from time to time. So if you want to know what the association does, this in broad strokes is what we do. And now let me reflect on the relationship between the association and the NIHSS. We, as the two institutions, we are harnessing our efforts to promote the revitalization of the humanities in South African universities, and as I said before, with a specific focus on the pursuit of an Africa purposed renewal. In a time when the global academic landscape is continually evolving, it's crucial to recognize that the revitalization of the humanities is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. To resonate with the unique cultural, historical, and societal fabric of South Africa and the broader African continent, we are embarking together with the NIHSS on an Africa purposed renewal of these disciplines. Sahuda and with the NIHSS have worked tirelessly over the last 13 years in identifying our imperatives to redefine the value of the humanities in the academy, and the NIHSS complements this by providing means to turn the vision into a reality through the doctoral scholarships. I think up to now, the Institute, from its formation or establishment in 2013, has graduated over 600 doctors in the disciplines of the humanities and social sciences, which is a big, what do you say, we have to make a fuss about it as humanities and social sciences scholars, because we know that funding in humanities is very thin. So it's no mean feat. Secondly, what we do together with the NIHSS is to hold annual national doctoral conferences where our doctoral students from across the universities in Africa, because we have partnership with Codesria as well, where they get together and share with their peers on their research, innovative research for that matter. And then this conference also has an alumni conference where scholars or graduates of the Sahuda NIHSS come and share progress in terms of where they are with their work. These are very important activities in the calendar of Sahuda and the NIHSS. And lastly, we also have a biennial conference, and this is one of these conferences that is hosted here today. This conference, as I said, is held biennially on a topic, on a topical and relevant subject in the humanities and social sciences. The conference is hosted by a university or universities of the deans in the network. Such conferences are designed to encourage active dialogue that respects diverse African and global perspectives. As I come towards the end of my presentation, the theme of the conference, Humanity's Imminent Crisis, a call for the restoration of peace, stability, and well-being, is so apt at this point of our global history. It requires us to dig deep from the foundations of our disciplines, understanding the value of humanities in developing critical reasoning skills and skills for evaluation and appreciation of ideas and difference, skills that are critical in a healthy democratic state. A leading scholar in the humanities, Nussbaum, I think humanities scholars may know her work, talks about the danger of dehumanization, which is the opposite of humanization. He says that this is as widespread ideologies and actions of racism, sexism, homophobia, fundamentalism, terrorism, polarization, demonization, and bullying, typically characteristic of what is happening now in the Israel-Palestine conflict and the Russian-Ukraine war. And she argues that the primary importance of the humanities is in allowing us to engage in this ongoing creative and critical restoration of the value of the humanities in society in order to reduce the evil of dehumanization. So it is so apt, this theme of this conference, and looking through the various contributions, the keynote addresses and the breakaway sessions, I see the value of the humanities in talking to these issues, in helping us understand the complexities of our societies and finding solutions to the challenges facing us in the world we live in. Ultimately, as indicated by Prof. Mawoto and Prof. Bantwini, these conferences must not just be nice to have. They must serve as catalysts for Africa's humanities revival by nurturing innovative research, fostering collaboration, and amplifying the voice of African scholarship to address the regions and global challenges and aspirations. Lastly, this conference is the first since COVID-19 pandemic. So we've had about a 5-year break. The last conference was held in 2018 at Wits University, Prof. Mucha. We are thrilled as an association that this conference could be held in rural-based universities that, mainly because of their location, are the last choice as hosts of intellectual engagements such as this. Thank you, Professors Mawoto, Professor Bantwini, not only for your successful bid to host this conference, but also for practically demonstrating what intellectual collaboration means. We wish to thank you and wish you a successful conference, and we trust that we will see some of the papers presented in this conference in publications or in a publication that will be dedicated in publishing the outputs from this conference. Siyabulela, thank you very much, Makwande.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Maseko, for those well-pointed remarks and situating the humanities and social sciences. We highly appreciate that. Earlier on, when I stepped on this stage, I failed to also do what is usually done, the ritual of acknowledging the powers above. So my apology for that. I think I was pressed by time. Professor Madaje, acknowledging your presence. I'm not sure if our DVC from University of Venda is here, but maybe in her absence. But also, I think the two VCs will come to that part, but let me also acknowledge Professor Mautu and Professor Bantwini, our hosting deans. Thank you very much for that. I should be advised in terms of how we're going to handle. Is Professor Madash going to speak? Yes, thank you very much for that. And when it comes to the University of Venda, so do we have the DVC? I'm just trying to recall what was said yesterday. So we will pass that, so we can leave it. It will help us to save time. Yes. And now I'm going to take this opportunity and ask Professor Madaj, who is the DVC Teaching and Learning. He's going to wear a different hat altogether. He's going to speak on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and Principal of the University of Limpopo, Professor N.M. Mokhalong. Please, let's welcome Professor Madaj.
Program Director, Prof. Masuha, and the Program Director in general. Thanks very much. My apologies. We were still looking for that picture, which I borrowed from the internet. Just look at that picture and see how beautiful it is. It represents, I think, humanity in its purest form, that we depend on each other. The baby there or the child can't survive without the mother. And the mother also will not feel fulfilled as a parent, which basically means we need each other in order to have meaningful life on this planet. Well, I'm not here to give a paper, but let me acknowledge the Vice Chancellors of both universities, University of Limpopo, Professor Mokhalong, and the University of Venda, Professor Ntambeleni, for affording us the opportunity to host an August conference of this type. We are therefore very fortunate to have vice chancellors who support the academic project in the true sense. And you may not take this for granted, that under the financial constraints that we are all experiencing in the country, it's highly appreciated if you have universities that support you. One will also like to acknowledge the DVC for research from Univen, Professor Feza, as well as the hosting faculties of humanities, Professor Bantwini from Univen, Prof. Mautu from University of Limpopo, and we are so grateful that they are working so well as twins, conjoined twins, as it were, like the mother and the child there. That if there is togetherness, cooperation, that in the end promotes peace, which is one aspect of the theme. We'll also like to acknowledge, of course, the presence of the organizing committee, led capably or ably by Prof. Makhatlela, as well as Professor Masuha, a well-established scholar who has been in the humanities for many years. And I will also like, of course, to acknowledge the presence of Professor Maseko, the president of the association, Sahuda-Nihss, that their support means a lot to us in the sense that not so long ago, humanities as a study field was in the doldrums. There was a time when those who studied programs in humanities or social sciences were looked down upon, even on campuses. Some of us were even shy to walk proudly, and you'll get onto your floor and you unlock your office, you hide there because humanities was under a lot of stress. And not so long ago, we may be having new academics in terms of age. Many academics in this field had to leave the humanities, and some, sadly, were retrenched. It happened. But one is so grateful, with the support, of course, of the department, DHET, and all the universities, as it were, as you heard, that we have 12 executive deans, which means humanities as a study field has started now to be revived. And we are so grateful also to learn that this program or project has thus far produced 600 PhDs. That is no mean achievement. I think we can give Sahuda-Nihss a big round of applause. And through that, personally, Prof. Masuha and the rest of the deanery, you should be very, very happy to have suitably qualified academics in this area, where it is going to become difficult to retain the academics that you currently have. On a daily basis, Prof. Mautu and Prof. Bantwini receive requests or even applications from colleagues who are being poached in quotes, by other universities. So humanities is now fashionable wherever you go. And we hardly have enough numbers of academics to fill these positions. I know in one program we advertised for a position and we could not get a suitable candidate. So we are happy that things have now started to move in the right direction. That soon, I think our dreams will be realized. And this is also part of our National Development Plan. For those who may not be aware, this plan aims to achieve about, Prof. Masocha, you'll help me here, 5,000 PhDs in the country per year. So we in the humanities have to play our part to achieve that target. And it will seem the target was that by 2030, we should be operating at that level, 5,000 PhDs per year in the country. And thus far, we are not even close enough to that target. But the humanities, I think, can make a meaningful dent towards achieving that. That is why one appreciates us having produced 600 PhDs thus far. But we should not sit back and think that we have arrived. We have not as yet arrived, and conferences of this nature, of course, it's one of the steps towards achieving this goal, because I can see we have students, PhD and master's candidates in some areas who by next year, I trust, will be obtaining their doctoral qualifications. And then they become fully fledged scholars and academics. So in a nutshell, I'm not here to give a long speech, but to thank also all of you for attending this conference. As that picture shows, imagine if we had invited you and nobody pitches up. You can't talk to an empty hall. So we belong together, we need each other, we have to uplift each other, because challenges in life will always be there. They are inevitable. But with conferences of this nature, I took a glimpse at the topics or the titles of presentations. And the topics are so apt, relevant, that they can make this country proud to be part of the global world. Because currently countries are competing fiercely as far as development is concerned. And we as South Africa, if we won't be able to produce the intellectual capacity that we need as a country, we are going to be left behind, while the rest of humanity marches on. So we'll also like, towards the end of my presentation, to acknowledge and even thank our keynote speakers who have agreed to come and give us their papers or their presentations. And one is so proud that we have Professor Ramosi, a renowned philosopher. When some of us were young, we knew about him, and we also read his articles. So if you have not read his work, you can Google his work there. You'll see how he argues intellectually. And for that, we cannot thank him enough to come and enrich the presentations and the discussions that we are going to enjoy today. Can we also give him a big round of applause? We must do so from a biblical perspective. We often say a prophet is never popular at home. But people like Prof. Ramos are popular worldwide. So we should be highly, highly grateful that he found time to be with us. We'll also like, of course, to acknowledge Tatana Baloi. I'm not sure whether he's here. Oh, yes, Tatana. I can't sustain. So we look forward to listening to your presentation. And some of us, we will stay for those presentations. You know, in many conferences, those who are like in management, they come and stay for 2 minutes and then say, hey, I have this and that business to attend to. But for our keynote speakers, I think we shall stay and also drink from that well of knowledge. Of course, Professor Feza will learn, she is on the way. We are also going to listen attentively to her presentation. So in a nutshell, we should also thank all the delegates, all the presenters, all the students. I may not have mentioned you by name, but we as universities of Limpopo and University of Venda, we highly welcome your visit, and we trust you are going to enjoy the conference. If I may finish by going back to that picture. Let's say 30 or 40 years ago, where were you? Don't give me an answer as such, but I'm just raising this rhetorically to say we were like that beautiful child. But then we had other people to take care of us, which simply means we have to take care of each other and maybe embrace, I'm not saying we should do it, and maybe embrace Ubuntu as one of the philosophies from Africa, our own home-bred philosophy that we can embrace in order to support each other as human beings. Because if we don't cooperate, there's no togetherness. We are always arguing and fighting. There won't be any progress, whilst the rest of the world is moving on. With these few words, colleagues, feel at home. You are all welcome, and we look forward to listening to your presentation. That even if you are going to present for the first time in your academic life, don't be afraid. Prof. Bantwini is there to help you to navigate the presentation. And even the questions are not going to be tough. We shall be very, very sympathetic. Colleagues, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of the presentations and the conference.
Thank you very much, DVC, Professor Madaj, for those remarks representing the Vice Chancellor. We highly, highly appreciate that, Prof. Madaj, for that. Colleagues, now, we really now move into that important time And I have the honor really and the privilege to introduce to you Remoholo. I think he will agree if I call him like that. Where I'm coming from, no professor. It must also have that Remoholo, the head father, Professor Mohobe Ramose. Personally, Nale and I, we met at UNISA. I think he knows where we met, but let me not bring my own personal agendas. And say Professor Ramose is a retired professor of philosophy from South Africa. He's here in South Africa, he's a South African. He obtained his Doctor of Philosophy in philosophy, cum laude. Can we clap hands, cum laude? Yeah. At the Catholic University of Louvain. I hope I'm pronouncing it, in Belgium, in 1983. So if you go back to what Prof. Madash was saying, where were you 20, 30 years back? So try to figure out. So he also lectured at the following universities: University of Zimbabwe and the Katholieke Universiteit Brabant, Tilburg University, University of Venda. How I don't hear those hands. You know, sometimes when you talk about having been at University of Limpopo and Venda, some people don't want, they are shy to say it. They should be very proud and say, I've served at the University of Venda. And this is very important. So a leading philosopher in this case. And Addis Ababa, if I recall, Professor, I think you were there deployed by the University of South Africa to head a campus, if I recall, during our time while I was still a young lecturer at University of South Africa. Currently, and this is very short, Professor, but then from there, when he retired, he served on a part-time basis as associate professor at Sofako Makhatu Health Sciences University, specifically in the Department of Clinical Psychology. I take it that working with Tatana, Professor Baloi there. So you can see connections and there. And now he is an associate, he's associated with that university still, with that university, and also still an associate researcher with the University of Limpopo. I think in your part of the chair, which is led by Professor Sodi and Professor Temani. And also the University of Pretoria. When we had a conversation coming here, he told me that he's with the jurisprudence department at the University of, you can see how diverse he is, transdisciplinarity and stuff like that. And thank you very much for that. He delivered many public lectures in locally, internationally, and has published many articles and books and chapters. Some of his articles are, I just want to mention, I doubt, therefore, African philosophy exists. What a wonderful title then. And then, or Wiping Away the Tears of the Ocean, and his monograph, which I would like to encourage you to visit and read, African Philosophy Through Ubuntu. He's working in that. If you look at scholars that have really, really done excellent work, Professor Ramos's work on Ubuntu. And actually, you were reminding me recently was when I was reading John Mbiti's work, the one who eats alone dies alone. You know, when you eat alone, you die alone. So it is actually back to your work, Professor, there. And I will encourage you, just go on your YouTube, your social platforms, just to check some of the work that Professor Ramose has actually contributed to this field. And important, we are really privileged to have a scholar like Professor Ramose, and I'm going to humbly so, and I know that I'm very young to be doing that, but to humbly ask you to address us, Prof. Can we clap again, please? Philosophers don't use these things.
Good morning to you all. I really wish to thank you all for being present here with us physically, these days also virtually. I also would like to acknowledge the two vice chancellors already mentioned, and also all the deans and their deputies. Well, it is also true that I am most grateful for the privilege of being with you today. It really was not necessary. It's just a privilege that I am with you, and I'm very grateful for that. As you can see, there is a chair beside me, and I have made a request to that effect for medical reasons. It may well be that at some point I will not be standing, but seated. I wish to convey that message by way of apology. Second, the paper I have prepared is rather long, given the time that I have seen allocated to me. I do recognize that there is an ethical dimension to time, and so I should like to keep within the slot of time that is allocated. In that way, I request that I be stopped. I won't feel embarrassed by the person responsible. If I go over time, please do indicate, and I will stop. I do have a watch, but I do not have a watch for purposes of speaking. I will be long also because of my natural slowness of speech. And so that will also eat into the time, but it is necessary that we keep the time. I believe that most have already read the title of my presentation, and so even the short abstract has also been read, I presume. We were asked to be as brief as possible, apparently because brevity is the soul of wit. So I will speak in two ways. One way is to indicate to you precisely what is at the back of my mind, and that will be by way of presenting to you 5 theses, which I would like to defend, or I am defending by what I will say. but I will not elaborate in detail. I hope the thesis would be understandable. Second, I will take some excerpts and abstracts from various sources to substantiate and illustrate my point. So, the title is Reshaping the One-Dimensional Man Through the Primacy of Science and Technology over Philosophy. In the beginning, there was philosophy. The branches that grew from it established themselves as independent academic and scientific disciplines, but without roots of their own. Today, they are conspiring to kill philosophy in pursuit of their aim to create an economic human being with injured reason and without a soul. Ubuntu ethics contests this creation. So, I mention next the 5 theses. The first one is the following. Africa is the mother of humankind. A reading from the National Museum of Ethiopia in Addis Ababa states that the world became African. This is corroborated by another reading from the National Museum of Hungary in Budapest. It states that approximately 1.5 million years ago, the first humans, already producing simple tools, began a journey from Africa, fated to populate the world. Since their exodus out of Mother Africa, her children used the blackness of the skin color of their siblings who remained in Mother Africa as the reason to return to Africa with ethically unjustified violence, denigration, disfiguration, humiliation, and mutilation in pursuit of wealth and profit, über alles. Ubuntu ethics is against this parenticide because its basic point of departure is promote life and avoid killing. The Ubuntu stance against parenticide is consistent with one of the key findings of the worldwide Human Genome Project research. Namely, this finding states that at the DNA level, we are all 99.9% identical. That similarity applies regardless of which 2 individuals from around the world you choose to compare. Thus, by DNA analysis, we humans are truly part of one family. I must mention that the author is a native English speaker, and he was the chair of this research project. And so he didn't make a mistake by using two very important concepts in this citation. One is that we are 99.9% identical. Exactly the next sentence, he speaks the language of similarity. There is a difference between some things being identical and others being similar. I leave it there for the moment. The ethically questionable right of conquest, firmly established in Western jurisprudence, was the foundation of widespread epistemicide and the transatlantic slave trade in the unjust worlds of Western colonization, justifying the seizure of the territory of the conquered people and the assumption of sovereignty over them. This necessitates the pursuit of the end of the cognitive empire built by the West and the restoration of sovereign title to territory to its indigenous original owners from time immemorial. Again, we notice that in justification of this particular thesis, one African scholar, Biennial, argues as follows in support of this. The repayment of debts is very questionable. The problem of the real debtor would have to be discussed anew if the colonial past of Africa is reflected upon. The need for reparation in favor of the African people comes as an inevitable conclusion. Today, it may be asked whether the tables should not be turned. Whoever recalls the history of Black Africa cannot avoid thinking of reparation from the conquerors of this history. The history of those who were killed and exploited and robbed of their dignity is not yet buried. The unjust deeds of the past demand an anamnestic solidarity with the victims. Another thesis, the country named South Africa is built upon the ethically unjustifiable right of conquest. Its proper name is Conqueror South Africa. This thesis is grounded in the following observations. The genealogy of conquest in the unjust wars of Western colonizations originates from Van Riebeeck. It comes as no surprise then that Heppel, one of the eminent jurists actually in the camp of the colonial conqueror, submits with superb justification. What does he submit? He submits that by the right of conquest, entrenched by legislation, the principle of legal differentiation on racial grounds was the legacy upon which the Union of South Africa was constructed. I wish to mention at this point that this article is actually published in a collection of essays edited by yet two eminent jurists of conqueror South Africa, namely Professors Ellison Khan and Professor Hallo. At the time, they were professors at the University of the Witwatersrand. I do not think that they missed this point. When they read the article of Heppel, they saw this. They could not deny it, despite the fact, of course, that Hallo himself wrote a book of more than 600 pages, namely South Africa, the development of its laws and legal system. At no point, even in the footnotes, at no point, even in the footnotes, will you find the word Bantu or Ubuntu. So which South Africa is Professor Hallo writing about? Well, when you check the content of the book, you will see that he's actually discussing the South Africa of the conqueror. So Heppel is very much correct in his observation. He is not the only one. Now, after the Union of South Africa was constructed on this basis, what happened? The Republic of South Africa Constitution of 1961 is the successor in title to the Union of South Africa. It did not repudiate the right of conquest. No, that 1961 Constitution did not repudiate the right of conquest. It condoned it instead. While we were waiting for Godot, then there was the Constitution of 1983, described by eminent conqueror academics, Van Wyk and Boysen in their book. The title is in Afrikaans, Die Drie en Tachtig Grondwet, the 1983 Constitution. They call that Constitution of 1983 a racial federation, implying that what the colored, I really don't like the word colored. I'm sure those who have been reading my articles know the reason why I do not like colored. So the colored and the Indian, according to the reasoning of the 1983 Constitution, the colored and the Indian have no title to territory. The territory called South Africa, they cannot claim a piece of land. Because they cannot claim a piece of land, what you have is a racial federation, a federation of races, the white, the colored, and the Indian. And in that context, it is only the white who is supposed to have title to territory. Territory acquired by right of conquest. So that is the 1983 Constitution. And then the argument begins, oh, why do you leave us out? So the UDM begins protest, United Democratic Front. The protest intensifies. Well, and you have the Constitution of 1993. So this Constitution of 1993 behaves exactly like the Constitution of 1961 and 1983. It does not repudiate the right of conquest. It condones and it sustains it. One important point about the 1993 Constitution is that it actually as a footnote, just as a footnote, in law that is a footnote, at the epilogue is a footnote. For scholars of literature with regard to Shakespeare, you can find sometimes in the place of Shakespeare, after the hit of whatever, then you have a section aside. And then this aside is kukokamoya. It gives you time to, and after kokamoya, you go back to. So, exactly the epilogue of the 1993 Constitution finally introduces Ubuntu. But it introduces Ubuntu in the context of asking or demanding reconciliation. Well, reconciliation. And that reconciliation, when you ask for it, why don't you in the same post-amble, why don't you speak, for example, to the Indian community and use also the concept satyagraha? Would that not speak to the Indian philosophy in this country and outside of this country? Why do you need reconciliation with Abantu only? You haven't injured Abantu only. You have injured the Indian community. You have injured the colored community. But you're saying, I want reconciliation with Abantu and all. No. So, something fishy, to put it mildly. And then we have the 1996 Constitution. Also, this very Constitution did not repudiate the right of conquest. And so, the land cannot belong to us, as famous advocate Ngugari Toby is trying to argue. And of course, if you check the subtitle of his book, you see that the discussion is about black lawyers of those days. It doesn't really touch the question of sovereign title to territory. So what is Ngugai Toby talking about? Anyway, we're preparing a response to Ngugai Toby. It will come shortly. Then the fourth thesis is that the quest for truth is the basic reason for the existence of philosophy, art, and the sciences. I want to repeat, the quest for truth is the basic reason for the existence of philosophy, art, and the sciences. There are many, I will show in the other part of the text, but let me cite just one scholar on this point, and that is Bronowski. The title of his essay is The Disestablishment of Science. What is he arguing there? His argument is that science is an endless search for truth, and those who devote their lives to it must accept a stringent discipline. They must not be party to hiding truth for any end whatever. There is no distinction between means and ends for them. Science admits no other end than the truth, and therefore it rejects all those devices of expediency by which men who seek power excuse their use of bad means for what they call good ends. In the body of the essay, I will refer to Socrates on this point. The next thesis, and the fifth one, is scientific and technological advancement ought not to supersede the preservation of ethical values, upholding the protection and promotion of life as a wholeness. Again, I will try, time permitting, to argue on this point in the body of the text. Now, on this point, I also invoke an African philosopher, Kwasi Wiredu, who was, to my mind, ahead of his time when he made the following argument. It would profit us little to gain all the technology in the world and lose the humanist essence of our culture. This you find in Kwasi Wiredu's publication of 1980, Philosophy and an African Culture. Kwame Nkrumah made the same point, his compatriot. Bujo makes the same point, there's several, but we stick to that one. Now, going back to the question of truth. It is well known that Socrates, without a written text by his hand, is actually recognized as the father of Western philosophy. So, we should not be too concerned that we do not have so-called writing. What is writing, after all? What is writing? That we are called the people of orality. Socrates was a man of orality, but he is recognized as the father of Western philosophy. One of the things he did was to move around talking to people, asking them, but what are you saying? Are you aware of what you say? And then somehow provoking them to deeper and deeper ways of thinking. And so those in power decided that Socrates is having a field day. According to them, he was corrupting the minds of the youth. And so they needed some remedy for this rebel, for this person who was disturbing the established order. And so he was accused of that, put on trial, and finally sentenced to death. And those who understood and knew that this is really not on, these were trumped up charges, the judgment is unfair, why should Socrates now go to the gallows? They didn't like that. So somehow he was approached and he was told, you know, we have made a plan for your escape because we hold that your death sentence is unjust, it is unfair. And he replied with gratitude to those who have hatched this plan. I thank you for the plan. It's really a good plan, and I have no doubt that it will work. But for sure, it cannot work better than the truth that I stand for. Thank you very much. I will have to die. I will not take your plan. I will die. And this, of course, happens before the birth of Jesus Christ. You must remember that. This happens before the birth of Jesus Christ. So Socrates was saying to them as they were trying to persuade him, what? He said, even if I die and the situation remains the same, and I'm asked the same question, I will still maintain the same answer. You know, I am prepared to die 100 deaths. You were asked to Google, so if you Google, you will please see my elaboration on this one. So, is prepared to die 100 deaths just because he meant to uphold the truth. So, this engagement in which we are, the academic, scientific engagement in which we are, is an engagement which challenges us like Socrates was challenged. It is a challenge to us. When we have this ongoing challenge to parenticide and epistemicide and linguicide, you call all these sides by name, facing these challenges, we must remember that they demand from us epistemic love. Epistemic love. Because epistemic love merged together with political love will make a Socrates out of us. Now, this we have to deliberate upon as a matter of conscience, but not conscience in the traditional Thomistic understanding of the word conscience, meaning God is whispering into you privately that this is right and that is wrong. No, I don't mean conscience in the whisper of God in private. No, I mean conscience in the etymological and African understanding of the word conscience. Etymologically is two Latin words, cum and scire. Cum means together with, scire, to know together with others. So if we are interdependent, if we really work towards the truth together. Conscience means knowing together. Knowing together what is right. Knowing together what is wrong. So we have to question ourselves exactly at that level. We have to question ourselves. Am I standing on the side of epistemic love, going together with political love, or am I standing the opposite side? Now, this is a challenge to us. Whether you are a student, whether a seasoned scholar, or just by virtue of being involved in learning, just by virtue of being involved in learning, you are already confronted with this challenge. And you see, truth is always a contestation. I told you about Socrates. In fact, one of his students, Plato, after he noticed that his master was insisting that he is going to die, despite the falsehoods against him, then it was that Plato posited the question, what is justice? By this, I want to say that, philosophy is not up there in the air, celebrating strange things in the air. No, it starts on the ground. It's always on the ground. It permeates the ground all the time. Of course, the history of Western philosophy, as we know, has got these divisions, but it also had to learn that philosophy, to be really meaningful, must be engaged in the questions of the day, and it must be in a position to actually give answers to those questions. So, that is why many, many millennia later, there appears on the scene another Socrates. But this one is called Jesus Christ. You see, and Jesus Christ had a very interesting claim about him. I am the light, I am the way, I am the truth. Yayibona ke? Yangena iqiniso. Yangena die waarheid is altyd. Dit is 'n vraagstuk. The truth. So people around you, what are you trying to tell us? You, the truth, uvelaphi? How? No. You see, so his question, and you know how things go. Human beings were forever religious from time immemorial. Now, religion is not the same thing as theology, because theology is actually a justification, scientific justification or defense of a particular religion. That's why you can have Islamic theology, because Islamic theology focuses on Allah, whereas the God of Jesus Christ is not Allah. So you will have Christian theology. Okay? So Christian theology then tells us, this man who makes these claims, for all these times when you had your Socrates or whatever, he was still God, but he was hiding. He was hiding. Deus absconditus. He was hiding, you know. You couldn't see him. Finally, he decided to reveal himself, the revelation. So God comes out of hiding and now declares, I am the light, the way, and the truth. From this time onward, you have to actually submit to what I tell you. People found it difficult. And so, he was also accused, as you know. Luckily these days, when we are moving towards Christmas, you know, so he will be born again. So, so there we come. He is accused, and the main person, Pilate, who's sitting on the chair there, asked him the question, what is truth? I'm so sorry that Pilate was so arrogant. He did not wait for Jesus to give an answer. After asking the question, he walked away. Sorry about that. But we are not left with a blank. And we know also that even Jesus died for the truth he upheld. So you see, even he died for the truth he upheld. Was he the second Socrates? We leave that to your imagination. But you see, with these figures, you see the importance of truth, the fundamental basic importance of truthfulness. It is there. It is a serious requirement. So we see that when things happen like this, the struggle for truth, we check. Time does not permit the ramifications of how these questions of philosophy actually gave birth to the natural sciences and other sciences. One of the texts that I can recommend is a collection of essays on the proceedings of the Third International Conference of Philosophy held in Cairo in 1980, but the publication was in 1983. Like if we are seated here today, and if the people are planning to have a publication, it takes time. So we sit in 2023, but we can have the publication. There you will see all kinds of debates and discussion around the meeting point between these. Okay, I will cite one or two of those. Now, one of the people of our time, 60 years ago, yes, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop, is Herbert Marcuse. And that is why he is in the title of, when you see in the title, One-Dimensional Man, I'm actually referring to his book, One-Dimensional Man. And with your permission, I wish to end on that one. Voila. And so, the thesis that I advance with regard to him is the following. Herbert Marcuse's advocacy for post-technological rationality may indeed be a new paradigm for those unfamiliar with the philosophy of Ubuntu. A philosophy silenced for many centuries by the ethically questionable right of conquest. For those brought up under the philopraxis of Ubuntu, Marcuse's advocacy is not a new paradigm, but a welcome companion in the struggle for truth, justice, and peace across the globe. And his call is this one. He writes, critical thought strives to define the irrational character of the established rationality and to define the tendencies which cause this rationality to generate its own transformation. Its own, because as historical totality, it has developed forces and capabilities which themselves become projects beyond the established totality. They are possibilities of the advancing technological rationality, and as such, they involve the whole society. The technological transformation is at the same time political transformation. But the political change would turn into qualitative social change only to the degree to which it would alter the direction of technical progress. That is to say, develop a new technology. For the established technology has become an instrument of destructive politics. Such qualitative change would be transition to a higher stage of civilization if techniques were designed and utilized for the pacification of the struggle for existence. I submit that such a new direction of technical progress would be the catastrophe of the established direction, not merely the quantitative evolution of the prevailing scientific and technological rationality, but its catastrophic transformation, the emergence of a new idea of reason, theoretical and practical. The function of reason is to produce the art of life. In view of this end, reason is the direction of the attack on the environment, which derives from the threefold urge to do what? To live well, to live better. And we are not living well. And we're striving to live well. Beyond that, we must continue to live better. Thank you.
He deserves another round of applause. Thank you, Professor Ramose. What an honor to have you in the house, and what an honor to hear your delivery. I stood up there because you did invite me when you started that. Whenever you see time, going off, come on. So that is why I had to come on board. On that note, colleagues, I think there's a spirit in me that says, let's recognize Professor Masemola after this beautiful delivery by Professor Ramose. I would ask that before we take questions and answers, we are mindful of time. We started a bit late, but it's worth a while that we all rise, observe just a few seconds of moment of silence in honor of Professor Michael Khomotso Masemola, please. Thank you. And on that note, I want to believe that within the Faculty of Humanities we are a family. There's a book that we've put there where each and every one of us, any message that you would want to pen down in honor and memory of Prof. Masemola, we can just, whenever time allows, go there and pen it down. On that note, I'm going to then ask the floor to engage our keynote speaker, Prof. Ramose. He did submit 5 theses, which he also engaged and defended. But sitting there listening to him in brief, for me, he is saying to us, based on the thesis, that the long and short of human history is full of injustice or injustices, which have then led us to having scientists without conscience who are not disciplined. And he is saying we have to, what I am now coining, Prof, multidimensional man. Let's enforce multidimensionality to deal away with this ill discipline that has led to parenticide, linguicide, and destruction of humanity, harmonizing humanity. On that note, I'm going to then ask for hands on the floor, and I'm going to give you enough but little time. I see hands already going. Microphones that are roving, please. There's a hand here. There's a hand, one. If you can keep them up so that they can see. There's one there, there's 2 there, and then 1 at the end. I'll take the first 3, and then Prof, would you want to take all at the go, or 1, 1, 1? 3 at the go. All right, 3 at the go. Tlatla.
Okay, I think it's fine. Greetings, everyone. My name is Tabang from the University of Limpopo. Thanks, Prof. I think you touched a bit on the constitutions from the 61, actually from the founding constitution, the 1910, the 61, the 83, the 93, and the 96. However, I just wanted you to touch perhaps on the EFF's call, for expropriation of land without compensation, the radical economic transformation faction within the ANC. I know now that there's Areta, whom are arguing that it's actually possible to, have this land reform within the current dispensation. I think perhaps if you can just touch on how different is the 96 constitution from the other constitutions. I know that, maybe previously we had a, parliamentary supremacist system, but now, we have this constitution that is the god of the political, and I just wanted you to actually maybe elaborate on that.
All right, thanks. Gentleman right behind you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Perhaps my question that is linked a little bit on what has been asked is the extent at which the conception of South Africa as the conquered has entrenched itself in the whole scheme of academia. How much is academia as an institution is reflective of the whole ethos of being conquered in its establishment? And the second last one is the crux really about truth. Is it its pursuit? Is it the upholding of the truth that is the crux? What's your take in that? Thank you. The second part of it, you spoke about truth. You made reference to the pursuit of the truth and upholding the truth. Which one is central? Is it the whole journey of pursuing the truth, perhaps until you get hold of it? Or is having gotten hold of the truth and upholding it? Thanks.
Got it. All right. Last one at the back end there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prof, for a very engaging presentation. My name is Tendai Chari from the University of Venda. I have got two questions. The first one relates to the concept of one-dimensional men, which you spoke about. I understand that the concept of one-dimensional men was a critique to the emergence of an industrial society. In our context, we are also talking about...
Prof. Chari, they are asking if you slow down the question. No, just,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The question revolves around the concept of one-dimensional men, which I understand to
You couldn't hear.
have...
If you may, maybe the engineers there maybe manage the sound. Maybe the echo is affecting output. Sorry, Prof. Char. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Prof. The question revolves around the concept of one-dimensional men, which you spoke about. I am aware that this concept revolved around, in fact, it was a critique of the emergence of an industrial society. As you know very well, in our context, we are also talking about 4IR, the Fourth Industrial Society. So my question is, do we need a separate critique from the one propounded by Herbert Marcuse to critique the discourse of Fourth Industrial Revolution? That's question number one. And the second question is, in your view, do you think that we need, or what do you think about the future of African philosophy against the backdrop of intensifying globalization, neoliberalism, and the ascendance of the discourse of modernity? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Chari. Prof, over to you to respond to those three questions.
Thanks very much for the questions. I see that some of us have two questions instead of one. I ask that by the next round, let it be one question so others can have also the opportunity to engage. Well, one of the points I made about the foreign debt of this of Africa as a whole, that actually we owe nobody, know nothing. So, in fact, it is a travesty of justice that Africa should be involved in paying a foreign debt. No, how do you come, beat me up, take everything from me, and please say thank you that I took everything from you, and then, okay. I argue those points elsewhere. I argue it here also in the thesis that, because Africa has received only political independence, no African country at independence received simultaneously or even gradually after that economic independence. The sources prove otherwise. There was no economic independence. So, economic freedom for Africa did not need the establishment, for example, of the EFF. It is an ethical imperative for the rest of Africa. So the EFF comes as a welcome kind of appearance to say, hey, let us focus on what really has been neglected. So the EFF, from that point of view, need not be seen in local terms. It must be understood as some kind of reflection of the African political reality since political independence, point one. Second point, I mentioned the whole question of, this constitution. We told that there were lots of talks in Kempton Park, and then after that, there is this constitution. And of course, the constitutions I have mentioned until 1993. In fact, they espoused the principle of parliamentary sovereignty. All the time, there was parliamentary sovereignty, and that makes a lot of sense, ethically and politically. Why? Because it is the people who are the sovereign. Voila. So if parliament represents the people, it is a sovereign parliament. Now, the politics of numbers comes into play. The politics of fear comes into play. When we had the 1983 Constitution, it was fine. Numerically speaking, the colors were not so many. We whites can still be okay. The Indians are not so many. So we whites can still be okay. Now, if we have the 1996 one, my goodness, these blacks are going to swarm us. You see, a subtle revival of the Swart Gevaar. So how do you deal with that Swart Gevaar? Well, you must think in racist terms and conclude that all black people think the same. Even if you know that there are different political streams of black political organizations, no, you want to argue. All black people think the same. And so if they come into the system in such overwhelming numbers, my goodness, we're going to be defeated all the time. So we must preempt the numerical defeat of blacks by doing what? Easy. We change for the first time in the constitutional history of conqueror South Africa. For the first time, we change from parliamentary sovereignty to constitutional supremacy. So the constitution becomes supreme. It becomes now the law that controls the mad wishes of the black people. The irrational wishes and demands of the black people must be controlled by giving the courts the right to assess the substance of the law. In those days, under parliamentary sovereignty, the substance of the law was not examined. It was matter and form, and the courts had to be satisfied with that. Now, when blacks come, they will include a lot of things. That's why the post-amble tells you, you Ubuntu, please don't have revenge, we are afraid. You see, so then when this comes, it forgets something. That you see, constitution also means not only etymologically, but practically and historically. Con, again, is a kind of corruption of the Latin cum. Constitution is two words, cum stare, standing together. Cum statuo, deciding together. Okay? Now, if you decide together, just tell us one thing, just to test that constitution. If you decide together, how is it that you will find it normal, very normal? How is it that you will find it very normal as a negotiator? How is it that you will find it very normal to just say, well, I know of the more than 300-year history of continued, systematic, deliberate pauperization of the indigenous peoples, including in this case, what they call colored in Indians. We know of that history, but you see, because we are Ubuntu, we say, forget about it. Forget about it. Forget about it. We agree to reconciliation and national unity and reconciliation. Could you, in your good sense, really say that? Yet, this is what has happened. Okay? Now, that is entrenched in the Constitution. You may not talk about land, and you talk about land as private property. The land I'm talking about is land of sovereign title to territory. There's a difference between the two. There's a technical and historical difference between the two. So, the Constitution is the guardian of rights unjustly acquired. Actually, they are privileges, not rights. Privileges unjustly acquired historically are now transmuted into rights. And so you're going to boast a Bill of Rights. How? A Bill of Rights? Oh, no. Language can be a very effective decipient, especially in politics and religion. So we got to be careful about the language used. So once the EFF says, okay, we accept this constitutional dispensation, even if it is based on the right of conquest, it means they are prepared to say, later on, in case we win one day the elections, we also will rule the country from the union buildings. Exactly the symbol and the reality which proves the point, the right of conquest. You are going to sit there and say, as a conquered president, I'm now saying this and that and that. Oh my God. Let's be serious. Just let's face the truth. Don't beating about the bush. No, let's face it. Let's face it and ask pertinent, direct questions. Pertinent, direct questions. You see, so trying to say justice will emerge out of that injustice is a contradiction in terms. I think the EFF, despite its supposed radicalism, is certainly not seriously radical. Why? Because not even in the manifesto of the EFF do you see a claim that the constitutional supremacy principle must be abolished and a new constitution based on parliamentary sovereignty. No, they are fine. Why? Now, if they are fine with that, it means their radicalism is with a big grain of salt. They are not being serious. You cannot do that. You are condoning racism. If you do that, you are condoning injustice. So, to my mind, the EFF is historically proper for Africa, but juridically improper for the change that it wants to achieve. In other words, it sides with those who cite the Harris cases of 1952 to say that, you see what parliamentary supreme sovereignty did? Then they quote the Harris cases. Well, who were the jurists? Who were the judges? Was there a single judge in that bench? In those cases, was there a black judge? So why should black people take over the responsibility? White people made that mistake, not us. Let us get into the judiciary and let's see. A judiciary of a choice. And let us see if we will make the same mistake. No constitutional supremacy. The United Kingdom has got no constitutional supremacy, and yet, with an unwritten constitution for that matter, it is said to be one of the best democracies in the world. So let's not be fooled by political advertisement.
Let's try the last one. You can always engage Prof. Ramos. I know he's very, very passionate on this one.
Sure.
Try to maybe give them. You sometimes say, "I'm giving you a snippet." Just give in response, just 1, 2.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to answer by telegram as per. Well, the question about the future of African philosophy is very difficult because the future is in the present. Okay? Africans are living now. There is no reason to assume that all Africans would be dead tomorrow. And so, for that reason, African philosophy has got a future all the time, especially taking into account its commitment to critique. So, there's no problem about that. Another one on the one-dimensional man and fourth industrial revolution. You know, technological rationality is what Herbert Marcuse critiqued almost 60 years ago, to be precise, 59 years ago. And to be hoodwinked, just to be hoodwinked into thinking that we are advancing when in fact we are regressing is very difficult. That's why it is necessary to pause and consider whether this technological advancement is making us live well, live better and best. So far, it does not do so. It is aiming to produce human beings without reason and a soul. Now, if you aim to produce human beings without reason and a soul, you are surely aiming to construct machines. And this is exactly the direction in which we are moving, and the humanities and the social sciences have a moral obligation to challenge the notion that we humans are simply soulless and without reason. Well, the second question about academia holding the truth, I will throw it back to you. How many universities now have human resource departments? I'm asking this because in the past, many universities did have personnel departments, isn't it? So the change of name from person, you see, personnel includes the idea of person, now personnel department. So let's do away with these human beings. Let us put them on an equal plane with natural resources so that we can use and manipulate them. How many universities have got human resources departments today? Was there a protest in the change of name? Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. And once again, let's give a round of applause to Prof. Ramose. And in the interest of time, I know there are many other hands, but in the interest of time, please, let's withhold him. We can always engage him. He's a very approachable gentleman and an elderly in the country. So maybe most of his intellectual work is contained in some of his writings. You can always access his works on, Google, YouTube, and we have some of his writings there, or books, 2 books he brought with here. If you may want to have access to them, they are sitting there. One is entitled African Philosophy Through Ubuntu, and another one is Tenacity of Truthfulness. So you can always get access to those. So on that note, let's thank Prof. Ramose again with a full round of applause. Thanks, Prof. All right. I